Money Matters with Zurich Life Insurance. Take optimistic action and shape your financial future with Zurich Life Insurance.
Helen Farmer with you and asking you to ask a pretty difficult question, and I hope you can answer it honestly. Would your family be able to manage financially if you weren't around to take care of them? You heard from Risha earlier, who said she didn't have a safety net except for her life insurance, and she wasn't sure if her situation qualified her to submit a claim. It has literally been life-changing and maybe even life-saving. And joining me live is Walter Diop, the CEO of Zurich Middle East. He's on hand to answer your questions, and many coming in. Walter, thank you so much for your time today. Really, really do appreciate it. And I think the sheer volume of questions we've had really speaks to the fact that many of us are quite guilty of burying our heads in the sand. We think of getting life insurance policies of being something that is a grown-up thing that we need to worry about. It's a problem for future Helen, not Helen in 2021. Can you explain a little bit about who needs life insurance? Can we go back to basics?
Yeah, good afternoon, Helen.
Hi,
and
Walter.
Thank you for having me on. It's a great question. And I think as we heard Richard's story a few minutes ago, nobody expects things to go wrong. I think insurance is one of those things that you don't really think about until you need it. Some insurance is compulsory. So you take car insurance. We take it for granted that we have to get our cars insured. We don't often think about insuring ourselves, our loved ones, and what would happen if something seriously wrong happens to us or to our families, and how would we cope? Mm-hmm. And at a very basic level, life insurance covers your life as it states. So should something happen to the individual who is covered, i.e. pass away, then a lump sum is paid to the beneficiaries of that. And whilst money can't ever replace our loved ones, what it can do is buy time and give the beneficiaries and the people that are left options to rework their lives, relocate themselves to a different country, start all over again, maybe change jobs, maybe dedicate yourself more to the family. Mm-hmm. It does all that. It gives you options. And that's why it's important, really. It's a responsibility that we all have, really, to look after our loved ones, the people really who are left behind. So we've got that type of insurance. Then there's also critical illness insurance, which is what Richard was talking about, and this is a very common type of insurance, especially here in the UAE. And this is essentially an insurance that pays out on diagnosis of any one of 36 different illnesses. So anything from cancer to heart attack, stroke, to COVID-related.
You've preempted my question. I was going to say, surely the last year must have had an impact on the insurance business. So COVID would be covered by critical illness, because we're hearing so much about long COVID as well, and the really long-reaching effects of that.
Yeah, so I think at Zurich, all our policies pay for COVID. So we have paid our COVID claims, and to be honest, we're very lucky to be living in the UAE. The government has done a marvelous job of vaccinating us. The medical services have done a great job of looking after people that were ill, and so on a nationwide impact, the death rate of COVID was actually relatively low. It did have a major impact, obviously, on the people affected. It still does on society and all those things. But actually, mortality rates remain the same as far as Zurich is concerned.
Lots of questions coming in for you. I've got a really basic question that I hope you can help with. How on earth do you calculate how much, and let's start with life insurance, how much you would ultimately need and over what period of time? So looking at me as a 38-year-old and we've got property, how do I even begin to start putting a number on that?
So I think that's a great question, Helen. There's various ways you can do that. We've got calculators on our website, but there's many other insurance companies that also do the same thing, which give you a broad idea of the type of and the amount that you might need. But just think about, if you're in your 30s, you have a young family, they're going to need to live for another 20 years or so. So, they're going to need to be, they're going to need income for another 20 years or so whilst they get themselves through university or whatever it is and schooling and all of that, which will need to be paid for. So it gives you an idea of the multiples. 10 times, 20 times your annual salary is not uncommon. Now, it's really important to get advice. I think you can do that by either going, like I said before, directly to an insurance company, going to a financial advisor, going to your bank, and they can actually have a look at your overall profile and come to a more specific number. But it's not going to be a year's salary if you think about it, because how long will that realistically last?
Well, with my kids, the amount they eat, not very long, let me tell you. But we have had a message here. So I'm in my late 30s. A message saying, Walter, can a 67-year-old take out life insurance? I think it's a great question. Is it too late to get cover at any point?
No, so we will cover people up into their 90s. So it's never too late. Now, it's important to understand that the older you get and the less well you get, the more expensive it becomes. But we look to cover everybody that applies to insurance with us. And in fact, 99% of the cases that get submitted to us do get accepted. So we will always look to provide a solution. Sometimes there might be an exclusion, or there might be a reduction in the amount of cover that you can get, but we will look to try and help.
Do you have any data around the average age of applicants for life insurance? Is it people who are being super proactive in their 20s or even 30s, or is it those who are slightly older and are starting to think about, end of life planning or potential illnesses? Is there an average age of applicant?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think on average, the average for us is somebody 42 years old. So in their 40s. And that's because we have some young people who are very proactive and going out there and sorting themselves out. And then we also have some older people. We have a relatively young population in the UAE. Mm-hmm. So that does tend to put the average down slightly. But if we think about the claims, and this, Helen, is really important, really, because this is where the rubber hits the road. The youngest claimant for life cover that we've had in the last 3 years is 28. The youngest one for critical illness is 29. And the average claimant for life insurance is 52. And the average for critical illness is 49 years old. Mm. And when you think about that, that is young.
It is.
If you get, like Richard, if you get, diagnosed with cancer and you need to change the way you work or how long you can work for, or maybe you need to move countries, or maybe adapt your home. This is where these type of policies come into their own and really can help out and give you the options that you need in order to continue to live a fulfilling life in well into the future.
And as Risha said, amid a diagnosis or amid grief, the last thing you want to be worrying about is the finances. How are we going to pay for that adaptations? Uprooting children from a home that you want them to stay in. Lots of questions coming in for you, Walter. We're going to try and get through as many as we can between now and 5 o'clock. Ali said, I'm a single mother. If I got life insurance, who would the payout go to if my children were still under 18? Great question. Can you name, be it a sister, a sibling or a parent, if you haven't got a partner?
That is called a beneficiary. And yes, you can. All life insurance policies allow you to nominate a beneficiary, and that's the person to which the payment will be made. That can be a relative, a friend, somebody who would potentially be the guardian of the children. So that's one option. You can name somebody, and the money goes to them, and they get given instructions by yourself as to what you want them to do with that money and how to spend it. Or you can actually, in some policies, put them in trust. A trust is a vehicle which is essentially you pass the ownership to the trust. The trust then has some rules, and that says, this policy will, if the benefits have been paid out, it will be held in trust until the date that the children are 18, 21, 25, whichever date you choose. You give it some rules, and that's when the payment's made. So you have several options.
There you go, Rowley. Hope that helps. Linda's saying it's too expensive, I can't afford it. What would you say in that respect when it comes to monthly payments? And I know obviously every case is going to be different depending on the payout, on the plan. But is there a way of making sure it is cost effective for something as crucial as this?
Yeah, so there's many different types of insurance. We provide solutions for life insurance for as little as 3 dirhams a day. So I do fully understand the listener when they say, well, money's tight, times have been difficult, and all those things. I think when you reevaluate your the well-being of your family and and really, or your priorities, you need to decide whether the goals and aspirations that you have for your children and your loved ones, whether you feel strongly enough that those need to be met. Mm-hmm. I would argue that it's money well spent, because over the last 3 years, Helen, we have paid out in this country $136 million worth of benefits to customers living. Yeah, they are neighbors, friends, people that we work with. We pay nearly $4 million US a month.